That Robert Hitt Neill and I should have ever become friends or even known one another is improbable as meatless meat. I grew up in a Delta farming family. He was definitely part of that community, although from some 100 miles to the south and west, owning and farming brown spur plantation. Until around age 40, like myself, finances ran him out of the game. This happened to correlate with the advent of his prolific writing career. So don't worry, he would tell me. Pray and write. When you can't write, read. Unbeknownst to him, among the most useful tomes in my collection for setting juices to flowing are his titles, such as the Book of Betsy, Going Home, The Jakes, The Voice of Jupiter Pluvius, How to Lose Your Farm in 10 Easy Lessons and Cope with It. Uncle Bob, as he was affectionately known, was a son, a brother, a father, a husband, a grandfather. He was a farmer, a soldier, a hunter, a writer, a storyteller, a Christian. He was a quintessential man of the land. He and I had spoken about him coming on the podcast, and on top of my to-do list, April 21st, was call Uncle Bob and schedule the podcast. I'm too sad today to discuss lost opportunities, all the stories left untold. So I'll simply read to you today, Going Home by Robert Hitt Neill. The echoes of the ambulance sirens wail hung over the small town like smoke from an extinguished fire. He woke slowly, easing gradually into consciousness. His head felt full, heavy, kinda cobwebby, he mused drowsily. He pushed up on one elbow, flinching involuntarily as his funny bone momentarily rested against a 12-gauge shell that had spilled from his hunting coat. Mankind, he drawled. I sure must have slept hard. He shook his head to clear it, rubbing his eyes with a fist that seemed to be more sensitive than usual. Getting more feeling back in these fingers every day, he thought. The trickling sound that had punctuated his dreamless trance came from a small, clay-bottomed branch that sent its leaf-stained waters flowing busily around a sassafras shoot that had caved off a foot-high bank during the last rain. Though its roots clung doggedly to the mother sapling, the brook was close enough for him to roll to his knees, doff his old camouflage hat, and dip a billful of cool, clear liquid. He drank several billfuls, holding the cat bill cupped with the top side down. A slight grin made his blue eyes sparkle as he thought, wished I had a nickel for every gallon of this stuff me and old Crawford have drunk. The blue eyes misted up a little. Wished he was drinking out of this branch with me now. A search of his hunting coat pockets turned up one sausage and biscuit wrapped in wax paper. He sat on the edge of the branch with his knees drawn up, one long arm propped over the knee, a huge work-roughened hand dangling idly as he ate slowly, taking small bites so as to savor the spicy homemade sausage more. Don't remember when a sausage and biscuit tasted so good, he reflected. He saved the last bite for Freckles, who had undoubtedly curled up on the sunny side of the sand blow about 20 yards up the branch. Carefully folded the wax paper up in his pocket and washed the small meal down with another couple of cat bills full of water. The old Remington pump was leaning breeched against the sassafras sapling. Using it as a crutch, he laboriously heaved himself to his feet, noting with little surprise that the old bad leg didn't seem to be as completely asleep as he expected. Still leaning on the Remington, though, he stomped his foot several times routinely to try to restore what circulation he still had left in the leg. "Freckles, here!" he called to the still unseen pointer. As he watched for the dog to appear, he absent-mindedly searched first his shirt pockets, then his hunting coat pockets for an after-lunch cigarette. He patted the side pants pockets, also unsuccessfully, not even a lighter. A glance around him failed to locate the missing items. Must have mislaid them someplace, he shrugged, mildly wondering that he wasn't irritated and that the nicotine urge wasn't too strong right now. His search was interrupted anyway by a small-sized but surprisingly plump liver and white spotted blur that shot through a sage-grass clearing, bounded across the branch, and pounced frenziedly against his chest with muddy forepaws. The pointer gulped the preferred bite of sausage and biscuit, licking the man's hand joyously, his tail busily slapping each boot top in turn. "You old scoundrel," grinned the man as he scratched the briar-torn ear. "Fella would think you ain't seen me in 15 years. The dog moaned his pleasure, pointing his head harder into the caressing hand. Man and dog stood hugging each other in total communion for a long, unmoving minute. For a long, unmoving, loving minute. Then the man tugged mock roughly on the torn ear. "Come on, you old rabbit runner," he grinned, swallowing a strange lump in his throat. "Let's see, can you point a bird?" He always enjoyed watching Freckles start off, speeding in wide, looping circles, such as he now began on the other side of the branch. "Fastest dog in the country," he bragged to himself. "Goes like a striped ape." The old bad leg didn't give him the trouble he had expected in crossing the little branch, and he slipped 3 shells in the old Remington as he started across the sage-grass field toward the creek. "Believe that's the South Fork of Pulitzer Creek. But this ridge don't seem quite as steep as I remembered," he thought. "Too much of a nap, I guess. But I'll pick up my bearings in a minute. Look at that scoundrel go." The liver and white had already made a loop midway the ridge and was now circling back to the top, framed against the hazy fall sky. He passed the edge of a post oak thicket, head high, and made a beeline for a bunch of chinaberry trees marking an old house site. Suddenly he braked, looking like he was trying to walk on eggs, made a few steps to his left and froze, pointing in a small dewberry patch. He was perfectly silhouetted on the top of the ridge, a picture from a bird hunter's paradise. "Hold!" the man shouted, knowing as he yelled it was unnecessary. Holds his head too low, and I reckon he'll always wag that tail real slow, but he'll hold a point till hell freezes over. The short climb was not as hard as he had thought it would be. He had expected the dragging foot to catch on more of the dewberry vines that trailed here and there. He wasn't even breathing real hard when he topped the ridge. The white of Freckles' eyes showed as he cut him around without turning his head to check on his boss man. "I'm getting there, fella," the man assured him, just enjoying the picture. The pointer had the birds at the edge of another sage-grass field that stretched down to the other side of the ridge to the creek 100 yards away. The post oak thicket to his right, a deep gully on the left, bounded the field. Perfect spot, he thought. They'll get up, sail across the sedge, and the singles will drop in the other side of the creek. He stood for a moment caressing the safety of the old pump gun, lost in just the simple enjoyment of watching the little pointer, whose tail continued that slow wag. Freckles cut his eyes around to glance at the hunter again and moaned softly. The man took a deep breath, savoring the smell of ripe muscadines mixed with the leftover smoke from someone's early morning fire. The autumn of a man's life, he thought, ought to smell like ripe muscadines, wood smoke, gun oil, and dogs. I ain't appreciated them like this in a while. That's a good thought. I'm glad I thunk it. Okay, partner, he spoke softly to the impatient dog. As he stepped in front of the pointer, the ground exploded and a dozen bobwhites whirred up in a perfect fan over the sage-grass field. The heavy gun seemed to shoulder itself. The safety snicked as it came up, and the barrel almost lazily swung past a cockbird, which crumpled at the single report. Small covey, the hunter told his companion. One's enough. Freckles told him with a look that he not only understood but concurred, and would try not to point any more small coveys. He retrieved the still fluttering bird lovingly and brought it to the man, who accepted it the same way. The rough hand smoothed the brown feathers for a moment, then started to slip the quivering form into the game pocket. There was a sudden whir of wings, and both man and dog started with surprise as the quail escaped the transfer from hand to coat and buzzed down the hillside to join his mates. Must have been stunned. The man grinned ruefully at the dog. That's all right, let him go. We had our fun with him. Freckles started toward the creek that the singles had crossed, but the hunter called him back. Let him go, he ordered, and the hand motioned the pointer toward the west. Sun's getting low fast, boy, and we need to be heading on home. His chest felt full, and that lump in his throat was there again. He caught himself moving too closely behind the dog and had to make a conscious effort to slow down. Pushing the dog too much. Hunting just like old Albert used to, he chided himself. The two of them were headed down the ridgetop toward the setting sun. Freckles not hunting as hard now, but still on the lookout for a covey close to their route. That dog just knows, he thought. A cowbell tinkled on a far-off ridge, and somewhere a woman tapped a spoon on the bottom of a dishpan to call her menfolks to knock off and wash up. Like Mama used to do, he mused. Way down the ridge they were walking. A hound suddenly gave voice. Barr! The hound trumpeted. Arr! That's old Jupiter, the man exclaimed to the little pointer. Got him a fox or a rabbit one. Or maybe he's just calling us. Bet you old Gabriel wished he could blow like that, he chuckled. The pointer made a sweep around the edge of a big thicket of blackjack oaks up ahead. If you gonna find another one, you better get to it before old Jupe gets here, the hunter called to his dog. Way he bellows, everything for a quarter of a mile each side of him's gonna run. The black and tan bellied again, and the man shook his head in admiration. First time I heard him, he sounded just like that, and him just a pint-sized pup. Seems like 25 years ago. He paused. No, that couldn't be. Where does the time go? The sun seemed to be setting extra fast today, he thought. The liver and white checked the edge of a thick stand of cedars down on the other side of a ridge from the blackjack oaks with no results. Wheeling, he loped down the old road on the ridgetop between the cedars and oaks and disappeared from sight. In the distance, but drawing closer, the hound belled. The man knew he had never walked this old wagon track before, yet somehow he knew there was one more sage-grass field on the other side. That's where this ridge points out, he thought, and then it's downhill all the way home. Jupiter bayed again down the ridge, and suddenly the hunter was overcome by a tremendous longing to be there. His chest seemed so full he could hardly breathe, yet he realized he had broken into a light-footed walking trot. He willed himself to slow down. Gonna trip and bust myself wide open, he opined. Yet the baying hound seemed to draw him with invisible strings around his swelling heart. Reckon I just love that voice, he said softly. He broke out of the narrow lane through the trees into the clearing he had known about. Freckles had obviously cased the north side of the field and was crossing the ridge again at the high point on the other side of the sage grass. The dog swung suddenly, nose high, and advanced cautiously to the end of the ridge. where a huge pecan tree and a tumble-down old chimney marked a former residence. He sank lower to the ground, and his tail started its telltale wag just as he went out of sight, behind what was left of an old privet hedge. "Hold," the man yelled automatically, and broke into a half run. Going to be a contest whether me or Jupiter gets there first, he thought. He realized, feeling rather foolish, that his gait had become a run, and once again willed himself to slow down. Lord, I ain't run since the time lightning hit that tree I was under back during turkey season. Besides, there ain't a steadier bird dog in the South. He ran to the privet bushes to behold not one, but two liver and white statues on point. The only time Freckles did not wag his tail while pointing was when he was honoring another dog. 30 yards in front of the pointer was a smaller dog, a little longer of hair, her small spots sprinkled with little more liberally than his. A drop, thought the man, using the local name for a setter-pointer crossbreed. She looked familiar to him. He realized it was Queen just before he heard the voice from over the rise. "Birds, Queen, birds!" The man knew it was Crawford's voice before the grinning face appeared over the rise. "There they are. Hold! Ain't that a picture?" The hunter nodded dumbly in agreement. The two dogs stood rigid in the gathering dusk, and the two old friends gazed fondly at him for a long moment. Crawford broke the spell. "Come on, let's jump these pottages. It's about quitting time anyway." He clucked his tongue, and Queen pounced into the middle of the covey. It was a large one, and the little brown bombshells burst all around her and whirred off towards the creek. The two dogs touched noses and loped together over the rise. Jupiter bailed again in that direction, close. "I kind of figured you'd be coming this way, so I asked them to let me meet you," Crawford grinned. "Home's just a little piece over that rise." The man emptied his pump and shouldered it. Jupiter baying seemed to come directly from the setting sun, which hung over the rise. His chest felt swelled to the bursting point with a strange type of joyous anticipation. He took a deep breath of the autumn smells and spoke around the lump in his throat. "Well, let's go home." The doctor's mask hung around his neck, and he spread his hands wide as he approached the family. "Sometimes you do everything you can, and it's still not enough," he tried to explain wearily. "Sometimes you just have to let him go." "It's over? He's gone?" the younger brother asked with a half sob. "It's over. He's gone," the doctor repeated dejectedly. "You know I was crazy about him too." "It's okay, Doc," the older brother soothed. "He wouldn't have wanted to go on without being able to get out and around. He's probably better off." The young brother blew his nose. "Well, we better go tell the girls," he sighed. The three friends walked together in silence out the front of the small-town hospital. As they reached the sidewalk, the baying of a far-off hound could be heard faintly. The doctor broke the silence. "It sounds like that old black and tan y'all used to have when y'all were kids," he remarked. "Old Jupiter?" the older brother asked. "Lordy, Doc," the younger one said. "What made you think of him? That's been 25 years ago."